We are here for the session titled In Conversation with Navid Shahzad. And may I request you to please put your phone on silent mode or put them off, please. This session is being moderated by Mr. Sarmad Khoosat. The total duration of the session is 60 minutes, and a question and answer session will be held at the end. But please make the questions very precise and to the point. And I'll tell you a bit about Mr. Khoosat. Mr. Sarmad Khoosat is a filmmaker, television director, writer, actor, and lecturer. He teaches at the film. He teaches film and video production. Mr. Sarmad has more than 20 television series and serials to his name, and his achievements as a director of drama series like Humsafar, Shahzad, Jalpari, Pani Jaisa Pyar, Daag, and Kalmuhi. He works with the Shaukat Khanam Cancer Hospital as a volunteer to create awareness about cancer treatment and raise funds. Mr. Sarmad has been twice awarded the Lux Style Awards for Best Television Director, the Hum TV Award for Outstanding Achievement for his drama serial Humsafar. He has also received the prestigious PTV Award for Best Director and the Pakistan Media Award. Currently, he is directing a film and acting in the lead role based on the life and works of Saadat Hasan Manto. So over to you, Mr.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Lahore, Kitabein, Shakespeare, PTV, Shoaib Hashmi, poetry. She's made of that stuff that Shakespeare said, dreams are made on. Whatever her passion was, whatever she wanted to do in life, she did it. And she's still doing it. One of the most persistently courageous people that I know of. Very talented, of course. Started with acting. She writes. She's written poetry. She started with writing in English, and then Urdu, and now she's also writing in Punjabi. When she speaks, like nobody else's business.
And Galileo.
Thank you.
And then when it comes to teaching, from teaching English literature at the University of Punjab to heading the Pakistan School of Fashion Design, or I'd rather say that laying the foundation for it, to actually creating one of the first proper film schools or visual arts schools in Lahore, Beacon House National University, to her consultancy work with the Lahore Grammar School. So from education to romance to theater to the Globe Theater also, to Farhad Humayun, Overlord, Navid Shahzad.
Thank you very much, Sarmad, for that wonderful introduction. I thought you were talking about a stranger because it didn't sound like me at all.
And why so?
Because
where am I wrong?
I'm truly humbled by the fact that an organization like the Oxford University Press should consider that someone like myself is worthy of being interviewed during a whole session dedicated just to conversations with me. I've never considered myself as someone who was very wise or someone who could give people a lot of advice or anything like that. And I also think talking about people who are still alive in the manner in which you have is not, sort of really foretelling when they're going to go there. I'm certainly not at the end of my journey, which it has been all along. I've considered life as a huge journey, occasionally ecstatic, sometimes overpowering. Like Bergson's idea of how civilizations are formed, when there is a rush of water and there's a little eddy of water that stays behind, that's the way my life has been. So we can today try and talk about the little eddies that I've created off and on. I've been teaching now for almost half a century. So I am a dinosaur in many respects. But I hope very much that I'm not extinct in my approach to what education should be, ought to be, has been, the many problems that there are with education, how compartmentalized it is. And I've completed the full circle. I started teaching at the postgraduate level. Many of my students in my first class were older than I was, which created a lot of issues in themselves. But now I've come back to being a consultant for a school chain. And I feel, on occasion, that 47 years ago, that is where I should have started. Because by the time students come to me at the university level, they're doing the last 2 years of their terminal degree for the majority of them. And it's a little too late to start deconstructing and then reconstructing again. So I've been with them for the last 3 years with the Lahore Grammar School, and I found the whole experience so rewarding that I feel I've rejuvenated myself. So I'm beginning the next yug of my growth, as it were.
Thank you. So there's so much to talk about. There's so many facets that all of us would want to explore and discuss. So just to kind of bring some sort of order to it, I was at Government College and there was this talk held by the English Literary Circle there, and Navid Shahzad was there. And she said something which back then I was completely perplexed by, and it didn't quite make the relevance or the sense that it makes to me now. So somebody asked her that why did she choose to teach more and not act as much? She said, well, teaching is like acting for me. It's a performance. There's an audience. It's like a theater for me. And I prepare my part, and I engage them, I entertain them, and I talk to them. And now, with the little bit of experiences that life has given me, and when I look back at that, I think you just said something so golden. Teaching and acting, they both started together for you.
Actually, I can't draw a line between the two of them. I must have been wiser that many years ago. I'm not that wise anymore, but reflecting on it, yes. Actually, I got pushed into it more by default than by choice, because I'm a child of the 60s. And when I was growing up, and I belonged to an establishment family, you couldn't possibly turn around and say, well, I'm going on to the stage and taking it up as a professional career. My father, who was an extremely liberal humanist, along with being one of the finest jurists that this country has produced, allowed me to engage myself with the theater. But I realized very shortly that I couldn't continue that as a career. There were role models for me. There was wonderful Yasmin Tahir, wife of Naeem Tahir, daughter of Imtiaz Ali Taj, who was a frequent visitor in the house. But I didn't have that kind of freedom. So I looked at the next best thing, where you could have a script, where you could have a captive audience who couldn't walk out on you for fear of being flunked, and the kind of things that I wanted to do. So I brought my passion for the theater initially into the four walls of a classroom. And that's how I started teaching. My first boss, as it were, was the wonderful Professor Sirajuddin, who actually brought tears to his students' eyes when he read those wonderful speeches from King Lear. And he was an incredibly sensitive man in many ways and very crude in others. So he was a wonderful mix of the two, very much like Lear himself. And that's how the whole journey started. I began actually not with theater, but with radio. And because it was live radio, so there's very little record of that. And that's where one started to develop the intonation and the articulation and the voice control and so on. And then, of course, I put in a year's training in America doing drama, and came back to put that into good use insofar as my professional activities were concerned. The passion that I had for the written word, I converted and translated that into actually acting out so much of what we read. I was very fortunate. I started teaching Shakespeare at a very early age. Initially, I taught Shakespeare with a different frame of mind altogether. He was one of the greatest writers ever. Looking at him and his work as classical, canonical texts, I was completely in awe of him. But as I grew older, and mind you, I was one of the youngest teachers ever to be inducted into the Punjab University. I was only 21 when I started teaching. Don't you dare calculate my age after that. However, the period of awe I had to leave behind very quickly, because the very heterogeneous nature and the dynamics of the class that I confronted each day wouldn't allow me to stay in awe of the language and of the bard and of the English tradition, as it were. I had students coming from Chak Jhumra and with no socks in their shoes, and there they were, the last 2 years of their degree, studying texts written by a man called Shakespeare, who'd lived hundreds of years ago in a country that they could even just dream about. How was I going to get through to them? So then I started a search of how Shakespeare could be relevant for us. And believe me, it was very easy. Because, of course, he was talking about universal truths. He was talking about characters that you and I face without us knowing it. They're very Shakespearean in many of their aspects. We face them every day. We come across greed, lust, passion, love, all the human emotions all the time. And it's just that Shakespeare is putting it into a different context. And then one single day, you know, like in a cartoon thing, you get this little bulb lighting up. There was a remark that one of my students made. And that really, usne dimag ki batti roshan kar di. I was teaching them Hamlet, one of the most difficult texts possible, because there's all this about the Old Testament and the New Testament, and there's this division of the two worlds, and one is a vengeful world, the other is a Christian world, and all these things mixed up, and Protestantism and Catholicism and so on. It was really getting very heavy for most of the students. And there I was trying to explain to them how much of a sin it was for the younger brother to have married the widow of his elder brother, and how Hamlet is so upset by all that has happened. His father dead, a mother married, the whole state sinned against, and so on. And one of my boys, who'd stayed silent throughout, just put up a wee bit of a hand. I said, yes, because he'd never spoken up in class. He stood up in his sockless shoes and he said, Madam, what is the big deal? All the time it's happening in my village. Elder brother dies, younger brother marries Bhabhi. Big deal. Now, of course, it solicited a wonderful guffaw of laughter in the classroom. But I tell you, they say from the mouth of babes, that's what struck the bell. And I said, yes, this is the way to go about it. To make Shakespeare meaningful as far as local custom, local tradition, local life is concerned. To indigenize Shakespeare. And that's what gave me the key. And then there was no looking back. And then I could see the spark in my students' eyes from trying to avoid making eye contact and shuffling their feet and so on. Suddenly, Hamlet became a story in Punjab. And that gave me the key. And then really there was no looking back. Because Ophelia, all the girls, straight out of the classroom, dominating father, possessive brother, someone she loves with pure innocence, discarding her, setting her aside, lost, confused, losing her balance. It happens all the time in our society. We've still got patriarchy reigning supreme. We've still got young women confused and frightened and being pushed into relationships that they don't want to be into. So what's the difference? It's just finding the key. And I think that young man, bless his soul, gave me the key to how Shakespeare should be taught in the subcontinent. Because don't forget, we've had in this region, we've had a very long affair with Shakespeare. He's very familiar to the subcontinent. He's been translated. We've had plays like Safed Khoon, which is King Lear. We've had, this is Agha Hashar, no less. We've had wonderful films made on Shakespeare's texts. We've got Omkara, we've got Makbool, we've got other films.
And Romeo and Juliet.
Ram Leela ki Ras Leela and so on, a kind of tinkering around with the Romeo-Juliet idea. So we've been fascinated by the stories of passion and vengefulness and violence that Shakespeare's world propagates. And it shouldn't really be difficult. But I think that most school teachers, along with university teachers, find Shakespeare so daunting because they compartmentalize him and put him into one of those authors like Milton, who is to be treated like his name is hallowed and he ought to be taught in a particular professorial manner. But that kills the intention, because Shakespeare never wrote plays for the classroom.
True.
He wrote them to be played. And I suspect, because one has become a trifle cynical as one grows older, he didn't really put in all the meaning that we critics put into his texts when he was writing them. If you're writing a play every 14 days, you're not really putting all those cosmic ideas into a play. And we tend to do that later. But fine, that's fine with me.
So from teaching now to television, and Shoaib Hashmi, and Tal Matol, and Sachkap, and Akkad Bakkad, the actor Navid Shahzad.
Well, I'd always been an actor. I started with theatre. Theatre's been my first love, apart from my husband. And I would prefer theatre to any other performance medium. even today. There's nothing like feeling the pulse of the audience and getting a reaction from them right there, right then. There's something so remote about performing and being encapsulated either on in a digital format or on film, and that being played later. I'll talk about that a little later, you know, how some people succeed in the theater and never make it big as far as films are concerned, because they demand two totally different kinds of approaches, and some people never make that transition. I was married. I had been doing regular radio shows with the late Muhammad Idris, senior correspondent with the Pakistan Times, who was a very dear friend and whom I miss till today. Shoaib came, and Shoaib, of course, is somebody that I had literally grown up with, in the sense that he was always the older brother, because he was the same, I think the same age group as one of my older cousins. So there was a lot of coming and going and familiarity, and going to government college and going about all these gorgeous men in swimsuits playing water polo and so on. So he was somebody who was a familiar person in the household. He came across and he said, I'm starting a series of programs, and I was wondering if you would be interested. And of course I was. We sat down and we thought about what kind of things it was going to be. भाई मज़ाह का program है, weekly हुआ करेगा, उसमें छोटे-छोटे vignettes हैं, and I want you to take charge of one of those. And we kept thinking about it, and without sounding immodest, the initial idea I threw at Shoaib. I said, how about a little girl's point of view of what the adult world is like? And Shoaib, being the genius that he is, immediately saw the potential in that, and then started writing the most wonderful scripts imaginable. He's very ill at the moment. He's had a stroke about 4 years ago, and for a man who spent his entire life working with words, he's not able to speak, which I think is tragic. So I really want to, in this public forum, acknowledge the huge debt that I owe to Shoaib Hashmi. Some of the poems I'll share with you later are also because he encouraged me to write in Urdu. I'd been an Anglophile, I'd been writing in English only. Shoaib took up the challenge, and he would write something like 15 scripts for 15 different characters every week for the next 2 years. So you can imagine the prolific output and the immense creativity that was there. It was like a huge family. We sat together, we sort of, I think in a parasitic way, we ate off the Hashmis, we lunched together. I had a very small child. I abandoned her, much to my mother-in-law's chagrin. But for the next 2 years, we did Sach Cup. And I think it goes to Shoaib's credit that he really changed the face of Pakistan television. I very readily admit that because there were no other channels, we did have a captive audience. But at the same time, the fact that if I go to a wedding in Islamabad and a retired vice admiral comes up to me and says, "Are you the girl who used to play that?" And I say, "Yes." He says, "I still remember you." So I think it goes to his credit, the kind of work. I think the credit goes to the entire Sach Cup team.
Absolutely, yeah.
With some people who aren't with us anymore. But we really put Pakistan television on the map. It warms the cockles of my heart when I go when I go to places like Reading in the UK, and a Pakistani immigrant, obviously, cleaning up the aisles, turns to me and says, "Hey," and I said, and that was it. And then, of course, as life goes on, I meet a lot of people, and this is happening increasingly, and I'm getting a trifle worried about it. Women come up to me and say, "Hi, आप मुझे बड़ी अच्छी लगती हैं, पर आपका नाम क्या है?" So I'm getting a little worried about that. I think I need either to change my name or do something drastic so people start remembering my name.
Nivanti, but so with TV, it was most of the work was that with Shoaib Hashmi Saab initially, and later on, but you never wanted to get into the 8 to 9 primetime drama kind of...
No, Sarmad, I'd like to correct you there. Something very monumental happened while we were still working with Shoaib. General Mujibur Rahman became Secretary Information, and we were all banned from television.
Oh, that's Balila. No.
That's Balila.
Balila, right.
After the ban, there was only myself and Samina Ahmed who continued to work with television. I didn't do drama, but I moved towards, and this has been something that has happened regularly with me. I move in one direction and then I find a little crossroad and I cross over and try something else altogether. I started to do a lot of comparing, precisely what you're doing right now. So, and during that, I met some of the most fascinating people because PTV used to have, not a weekly, but every time we had somebody of distinction coming, it was called Visitor's Book. So I talked to people like Larry Collins and Dominique Lapierre and the cricketers' wives and so on and so forth, and it was a wonderful experience for me. Then I went on to my friend Muniza Hashmi, with whom I have done a huge amount of work, which people don't remember as well because it wasn't really dramatic in the performance sense, but was perhaps, in a sense, far more meaningful because I did a lot of women's programs, the journey of the women of Pakistan. Regularly we did that. And then, of course, one of the longest running children's programs called Ek Bata Teen. Very recently I came across income tax वाले याद करते रहते हैं for different reasons. तो मैं दफ्तर में गई वहाँ पर तो एक शख्स जिसकी हालत कुछ यूँ थी कि सर पे बाल नहीं थे और काफ़ी सेहतमंद लगते थे, वो फ़ौरन उठ के खड़े हो गए, मैडम। तो मैंने उनकी तरफ देखा, मैंने कहा, वही मैंने बात की कि आपका नाम क्या है? तो वो कहने लगे, मैं जी क्लास ऑफ फलाना 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 और ये और वो, आप बताइए आप यहाँ क्यों आई हैं, हमें हुक्म दिया होता, हम पहुँचे होते, इस किस्म की चीज़ें. I think one of the wonderful ways in which you can explore life is to give a chance to everything that you want to do. And this is what happened to me. I went into teaching, I did my wonderful television. I've been working on television again for almost half a century. In recent years, a little less than what I used to do. And then I branched out into a lot of other things. You know, in olden times, it wasn't uncommon for people to be what we call Renaissance people, to be able to do more than one thing with excellence. I don't know why we find it so strange now. Hey, तुसी ये भी कर लेंदे हो? Oh, तुसी वो? Oh, मैं तो समझे. I got trapped between the two lobbies. Television people took me, oh, te ji ustani hai. And the academic world treated me as a fly-by-night kind of person. she's on television all the time. So really, I was walking on eggshells most of the time.
And you did something which I recently kind of discovered. There was a play called Dore Junu. और उसके बारे में किसी ने एक बड़ी मज़े की बात ये कही कि वो बागबान नहीं जो भी बनी वो पीटीवी पे दौरे जुनून जो था तो बागबान तो अब बन रहे हैं. But again, this is what, 80s, right?
This is 83.
And this is like an unusual play which is 2 characters. And it's you and
Muhammad Qavi.
Kavi Saab. So, but for that matter, so TV still kind of didn't get as much of Navid Shahzad in terms of drama acting as teaching or say...
Sarmad, there's a little known fact that with Shoaib Saab we did a lot of plays.
Right.
And despite the fact that it was during Bhutto Saab's period that we did a lot of plays, so many of them were never aired for a variety of reasons. Partly because of the content, because they were adapted from, say, the Philadelphia Story or very famous American plays, and they were played particularly with a very Western slant. One of the plays that really made ripples, and Bhutto Saab himself saw it and said, "Ise release karo," was Antigone, where I played Antigone and Shoaib Saab actually
A TV
played,
version?
Yes, Shoaib
Wow.
Saab played Creon.
Wow.
It was never aired because, of course, it's a very subversive play in many ways. So the political angle kept coming in. So a lot of my work has never actually been seen. But apart from that, yes. Once I did Dore Junoon, I was offered these elderly roles all the time. I was in my 30s when I did that.
And you played like a 60, 70-year-old.
Even older,
Older,
perhaps.
right.
I didn't want to be stereotyped. I didn't want to continue to play the same old character in other plays. Then I did another play, Ghulam Gardish. And everybody came to me with these Chodrahat wale and these stern, beautiful women who didn't think much of their husbands and things like that. I didn't want to be typecast.
Right.
So I've had bad luck as far as the offer of plays is concerned, which is why you haven't seen me that often on television.
Theatre wale, talking of acting and storytelling and dramas. One little anecdote again, at least a decade ago, so there was this conversation about what should be done on television and what kind of stories should we be telling to the new generation of viewers that we have. And another very fascinating thing about Nivi Auntie is the way she speaks. So there's this whole hypnotic thing about it, right? So when she fuses Punjabi and Angrezi and Urdu, so she said, "Ke, I have this dream project," and then she switched to Punjabi, "Anni maiye, kante hath rakh ke ja rahi hai, and basante," and I want to do Romeo and Juliet set in the walled city of Lahore. And what do we see now? Goliyon ki Ras Leela, Ram Leela, which is like, I don't know.
And no Basant.
And no Basant. So I know that, so not only her association with Shakespeare, her expertise and command on his works, but with Lahore and theatre. So it's I don't know, somehow I do want to find that link, that one common denominator which binds so many things for you when it comes to being so passionate about telling stories.
I think I at the risk of boring you, I'd like to take you back into history a while. 1949 December, 4 men sat in my father's house, who at that time had been appointed custodian evacuee property. The men were Imtiaz Ali Taj, Doltana Sahab, Abdur Rahman Chuktai, and of course my father. There was a Pili Koti on the Mall, which was called Master Tara Singh's Dance School. It was an evacuee property. And these 4 men sat and decided that in the infant nation, they needed to build a platform for the performing arts. And government was asked to give that particular property, very valuable property, for the Alhambra. That's where the first performing arts platform became possible, way back in 1949. But at the same time, something very disturbing. When Sardar Abdul Rab Nishtar became Minister for Industries, the first directive that his ministry sent out was, all filmmaking should not be done by Muslims, but to be left to infidels to do the job. So in that sense, on the one hand, you've got the Alhambra coming up, and on the other hand, you've got the state policy saying there's no room for filmmakers or people of that ilk within the new state. So we've lived with that contradiction throughout. I grew up in a household. I'm Fortune's child, I really am, and I can't thank God enough for that. I've been truly blessed. I grew up in a household where Abdur Rahman Chugtai came and gave me art lessons, where Imtiaz Saab would sit and read his plays with us, and a very young, lovely-looking Hanif Rame would come with his paintings, and I would hold my father's hand and go off to these wonderful tented places at the Alhambra, and hear Roshan Ara Begum sing and Farida Khanum in apne sare jalve mein wo wahan baithi hoti thi. So my childhood was a magical childhood, and not to be touched by all that I saw and heard would really have been a tragedy. Luckily for me, I was allowed to do all that. I learnt music. I played the violin for the longest time. Don't ask me to play it now. I was encouraged to paint. I even went to the National College of Arts after I'd finished my master's in English literature while I was waiting for my result to be declared. And according to Saeed Akhtar, I draw very well. So I'm really flattered by that. That is an area that I haven't explored yet. I sat with men of letters, men who were passionate about what they wanted to do, cultured, wonderful men. The manner in which Chugtai Saab did a color wash was pure magic. Nobody else could do that. And all that, really, in a sense, fermented inside me all this while. And of course, then I found outlets in the theater. I certainly found an outlet in the classroom. I found it on television. I found it in writing. And if Sarmad is going to allow me, I'm going to read a few of my writings.
Just about to tell you that time does fly by. And
yes,
it's been like, I don't know, so absolutely. Lekin, usme pehli meri farmaish, Punjabi ch, pehli waali. Because that's the moment she switches to Punjabi and Angrezi, I don't know, it's, well.
ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਸੁਣਾ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ ਮੇਰੀ ਦੋਸਤ ਇੱਥੇ ਬੈਠੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਸਰਬਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਕਲਾਸ ਫੈਲੋ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਬਾਅਦ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਰੇ ਤੇ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਛੁਡਾ ਲੈਣਾ
और वो एक और भी आपके बारे में परसेप्शन या लोगों की वो बन जाती है बहुत अंग्रेज़ी मीडियम है अंग्रेज़ी में लिखती हैं और लेकिन जब मैं आज सिर्फ
ये छाप जो है ये बड़ी मुश्किल है क्योंकि उस्ताद ही होता है और वो फिर कहते हैं कि जी है इंग्लिश लिटरेचर एक्चुअली आई बीन आस्क्ड जज साहब की बेटी और वो इतने बड़े उर्दू दान आपने इंग्लिश लिटरेचर क्यों किया तो भाई आती अंग्रेज़ी थी उस ज़माने में उर्दू तो बहुत बाद में आई अर्ज़ करती हूँ कन्ना वाली गुन्या परांदा चूड़ा चढ़ा चांदी दा चुन्नी लै कोठे खलोती कावां नाल दुख सुख करदी शामा पै वेड़े धुप पराई होई आउण वाला आया ना कोई रोटी तवे पई सड़दी लड्डू बासी लस्सी खट्टी चूड़ा डिग डिग पैंदा आपे ही झल्ली जुगनू फड़दी चानण दिल दा ना होया। माए नी किन्नू हाल सुनावा दिल दा, गंढे वग्गो छिलदा रहिंदा, मैं आपे ही छिलका छिलका होई। पानी पी पी त्रे न मुक्के मेरी, खेतां विच सरियों हसदी, पर मैं हरी ना होई।
Wow, wow.
लूण है बहुता, मिठा थोड़ा, रोटी ठंडी पानी तत्ता, मुंह वटा के लगा सौण। नेरी वगी अंबी डिगी, चूरी खा खा तोता उड्या। फर फर करदी गुड्डी वांग मींह च भिज्जी कोठे डिगी, की जाना मैं कौन।
Wow, wow.
खबरे किदे बूए बन्नी, वाज मेरी सुनदा कौन। पाटा झग्गा त्रोपे लावां, चिरदे दिल नू सीवे कौन।
Wow.
और ये ज़रा और किस्म की है, मगर सुन लीजिए। नी ना खाए नी लड्डू पीठी, सलूनी हो जाएंगी, ना खाए नी कच्ची अम्बी, खट्टी हो जाएंगी। चलिए कुर्ती पा, चूड़ा चढ़ा, मिस्सी ला के दंद चमका, गुन गुन परांदा गुत लहरा, उच्ची अड्डी गुरगाबी पा। नी चलिए सत्तू विच ना शक्कर होवे, चूरी विच ना होवे घ्यो, चुल्हे विच ना लक्कड़ बल्ले, अखां विच ना सुरमा हो, किस कम दी है जवानी। भैड़िए तू ते मैनू मिठी चंगी लगदी, जिवें नवीं गुड़ दी डली हो।
Wow.
ये एक नज़्म है जो मेरे सफ़र का एक बड़ा ही अजीम हिस्सा है। जब शुएब साहब ने ये नज़्म पढ़ी तो उन्होंने कहा कि मैं ये लेके जाऊंगा और फैज़ साहब से कहूँगा कि तुमसे बात करें और तुम ज़्यादा लिखो। फैज़ साहब उन दिनों में बहुत अलील थे और महीने बाद उनकी वफ़ात हो गई, बल्कि अब उनकी बरसी आने वाली है, तो वो मौका हाथ से चला गया। लेकिन इतना कह देना कि ये प्रॉमिसिंग है, मैं ये नहीं कहती कि अच्छी है, ये प्रॉमिसिंग है और तुम्हें उर्दू में लिखना चाहिए। तो उर्दू शायरी की मेरी जो इब्तिदा है वो कुछ इस तरह से है। जब तुम्हारा साया मेरे वजूद को हल्के से छूता हुआ आगे यूं निकला, जैसे धुंध में लिपटी हुई तस्वीर हो, रेशम के बदन से रात गई खुशबू की लपक हो। मैंने तुम्हें पहचाना नहीं, क्या तुम ही बरसों से मेरी रूह की तंग गलियों में करवटें लेते हुए बेदार होने को थे। आज जब आईने में झांका तो सूरत कुछ बदली सी पाई। सोचती हूँ उदास यादों से आरास्ता, सांसों से उठती हुई सुनहरी डोर खींच लाएगी तुम्हें मेरे पहलू में। पर डरती हूँ उस रोज़ से जब पसीने से टिमटिमाते हुए सुर्ख गाल बदलती नज़र के सर्द झोंके से जर्द पड़ जाएंगे, जैसे शफ़ाफ चश्मों में गदले पानी मिल जाएंगे, या बच्चे मैली उंगलियों के निशान नए रोगन पे छोड़ जाएंगे। मैं अपने जहन से तुम्हारा एक एक खाका उखाड़ फेंकूंगी, जैसे खाना बदोश थक कर रात की तारीकी में सो जाएंगे।
Is that you are a visual person? Your poetry has that. It has pictures in it.
Well, I think that is the force of literature, adab. उर्दू, पंजाबी, अंग्रेज़ी, जो कोई भी हो, सिंधी, बल्कि मैं तो आप सबको मुबारकबाद देना चाहती हूँ। क्या कमाल सिंध ने किया है ये फेस्टिवल करके। मुझे इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं कि कौन सी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी कर रही है, कौन सी नहीं कर रही। सिर्फ इतना सोच लेना कि अपनी सकाफ़त को बचाने के लिए और उसको सेलिब्रेट करने के लिए हमें कुछ करने की ज़रूरत है। आई सल्यूट यू रियली। और मैं मैं बड़ी पुरुमीद हूँ कि अब ये लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल्स के तो एक साइकिल्स शुरू हो गए हैं, अब ये इस तरह हमारी सकाफ़त को सेलिब्रेट करने के भी साइकिल्स शुरू होंगे। बड़ी पुरुमीद हूँ इस बात पे। जस्ट अ क्विक वन पोएम इन इंग्लिश। माय फादर ऑलवेज सेड कि, बल्कि मेरी वालदा कहा करती थी कि मेरे घर शी वॉज अ पंजाबी फ्रॉम जम्मू with a Lucknow background. My father was totally Punjabi from वज़ीराबाद, और मुन्नू भाई जब भी मुझे देखते हैं तो कहते हैं मेरी वज़ीराबाद पैड। So she used to say कि ये जब मेरे घर वाले जब बात करते हैं आपस में तो वो अंग्रेज़ी में बातचीत करते हैं, और जब वो किसी मेहमान को मिलते हैं तो वो उर्दू में बात करते हैं, और जिस वक्त वो झगड़ा करते हैं तो फिर वो पंजाबी में झगड़ा करते हैं। तो सारी उम्र गुजर गई ये 3 ज़ुबानें जो हैं अपने घर में सुनते हुए। इसलिए माजरत के साथ एक ज़रा उदास सी नज़्म है, लेकिन इतनी उदास भी नहीं है। I lost my husband 3.5 years ago to cancer, and I wrote a series of poems for him. They're very short, and I would very much like to share them with you, because I rarely get a public platform where I can talk about him without getting teary-eyed. So if you'll be a little patient, I'll read them to you.
And of course, we're talking about the great Shahzad Humayun Sahab.
These are a series of poems called They Say. They say, live long enough and you become the place. Do you live here, they ask me. Me? Nah, I'm just passing through. They say, if the sun sets, so must the man. The sun also rises, but does every man? This is a poem called Miracles. I never placed my faith in miracles. Strong and lean, I spat them out, crutches for the foolish, dark with ignorance. Why is it then, thinking of you, I think of flowers? That you should love me, now, with my body softened with age, scarred with the pain of giving life. Is this not a miracle then?
Wow.
This is a poem called Another Country. Willows trail spider limbs dipped in gold. The forest flames while the jacaranda spills lilac on pregnant greens. Bougainvilleas explode and jasmine scents head, heart, body. There is a secret country deep within me, peopled with images of you. Magnolias wax elegantly, and orchids bloom the year round. But love? Ah, love is yet another country.
Nivanti, I'm sure everybody's going to hate me, yes, because for the Q&A...
This is the last poem.
Yes, please. Yes, yes.
And I must read this because...
And I said, she has that hypnotic effect. You don't want anybody else to talk when she's talking.
This I wrote just before I came to the festival. And I thought I should share it with you because the festival inspired this. It's called Where the Dead Go to Live. They say the heart dies slowly, a day at a time, shedding leaves until none remain. You were my spring, my summer, my fall. You were my only country, my all. And as I wander looking for winter signs to show me where the dead go to live when they are gone, I face south to see my yesterdays like caged birds that do not sing, and memory stains like fading ink. To the north, I see only a heart flooded with tides of sorrow and poems full of ghosts. My only comfort now, as I stand shivering at the crossroads and cannot find the way home, is that you can see me For now, I am the dark spot in your sun.
We have very little time, but please, yes. Any questions? Yes, please. Microphone? The microphone, please.
टीचिंग इज़ एक्टिंग, तो ये बताइए कि क्या हो गया है, कि एक्टिंग ख़राब हो गई है या टीचिंग कुछ गड़बड़ कर गई है?
बड़ा ही अच्छा सवाल है और काश कि मैंने इतना ना बोला होता और हम ये सवाल पहले कर लेते। मेरा ख्याल है जी दोनों चीज़ें ख़राब हो रही हैं। I do not mean at all to disparage what young people, and I include Sarmad because I worked with his father, what young people like him are doing, but there are exceptions. My own son is a professional musician. चीदा चीदा इन बच्चों को छोड़ के उसके अलावा इतनी रैम्पेंट कमर्शलिज्म आ गई है, क्योंकि जब पैसा आपका खुदा बन जाए तो फिर जाहिर है कंटेंट जो है उसके मुताबिक डिक्टेट होता है। आप भी जानते हैं, मैं भी जानती हूँ, हम टेलीविज़न देखते हैं, कहानियाँ देखते हैं, सिनेमैटिक कहानियाँ, टेलीविज़न कहानियाँ, सब का एक ही मरकज़ है और इतनी और कहानियाँ हैं जो बताने के लिए और शेयर करने के लिए लोग बैठे हैं विदाउट रिसोर्सेज।
अगर हम उसे
जी जी
दोनों का जिक्र किया था
जी,
आपका प्ले था बहुत ज़बरदस्त और हमें बहुत मज़ा आया, अभी तक याद आता है। अनवर मकसूद ने उसको लिखा था
जी।
हम जब रोमियो जूलियट का जिक्र करते हैं तो शेक्सपियर का ऑटोमेटिकली आ जाता है जिक्र, अनवर मकसूद का भी कर दीजिए।
जी एब्सोल्युटली, सॉरी माय बैड, वो मुझसे मिस हो गया, बट डेफिनेटली जी अनवर मकसूद साहब हमारे लिए तो जी एक लिविंग लेजेंड। नहीं ऑफ कोर्स, उसके अलावा भी बहुत कुछ
कि अनवर साहब हों, इंतज़ार साहब हों, हमारे और बहुत से लिखने वाले हैं जिनका मैं फहरिस्त तो नहीं दे सकती। फहमीदा रियाज़ हैं, किश्वर नाहिद हैं, ज़हरा निगाह हैं, इतने लोग हैं जो इतना खूबसूरत लिख चुके हैं, लिखते हैं अब भी। फैज़ साहब का ही सारा मजमुआ देख लीजिए कि पढ़ते पढ़ते और तो भी ख़त्म ना हो और वो रोमान जो है उनके साथ वो जारी रहे। मेरा कहने का बिल्कुल ये मकसद नहीं है कि हमारे यहाँ ये सब कुछ है, नहीं, बिल्कुल है और इसको पढ़ाने वाले भी हैं। मेरी दोस्त आरफा सैयदा की सारी उम्र गुजर गई यही कुछ पढ़ाते हुए। ये है, लेकिन ये काम बहुत थोड़ा हो रहा है, मार्जिनलाइज्ड है हमारा जो। और पर्टिकुलरली जो हम जिस वक्त हम तालीम की बात करते हैं तो तालीम में जो इस कदर हमने एक दौड़ पकड़ रखी है कि हम साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी और ये ऐसी चीज़ें पढ़ाएं विच आर मार्केट ओरिएंटेड, जिससे फ़ौरन नौकरी मिल जाए। देखिए, इंफॉर्मेशन और नॉलेज, इन दोनों में बहुत फ़र्क है। इस वक्त हम इंफॉर्मेशन की दौड़ रहे हैं और नॉलेज और जो सही मायनों में जो लर्निंग का मकसद है वो बहुत पीछे छोड़ रहे हैं।
True. जी प्लीज़ माइक्रोफोन। And I think we can just take 2 more questions, right?
नवीद, यहाँ पे जो नापा खुला है वो बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहा है इन टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेनिंग, क्योंकि ट्रेनिंग के बगैर ठीक है एक्सपीरियंस से तो कर लेते हैं मगर बहुत बेहतर हो जाता है। अब आप लोग लाहौर में बेस्ड हैं और मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूँ, इज़ देयर एनी प्लेटफॉर्म और इज़ देयर एनी मूव टू एस्टैब्लिश समथिंग लाइक दैट इन लाहौर, क्योंकि कल्चरल कैपिटल तो हमारा लाहौर ही है।
जी, बहुत अच्छा किया जो इस चीज़ की निशानदेही की। बड़ी खुशाइन बात है, NAPA इस्टेब्लिश हुआ। आई हैव सर्व्ड ऑन देयर बोर्ड फॉर 3 years एंड दे आर डूइंग अ वंडरफुल जॉब। लेकिन पिछले मैं समझती हूँ 10 वर्षों में एक क्वांटम चेंज आया है यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में, और पर्टिकुलरली यूनिवर्सिटीज़ लाइक बीकन हाउस नेशनल यूनिवर्सिटी, जिसमें एक बाकायदा प्लेटफॉर्म है थिएटर, फिल्म एंड टेलीविज़न। दिस इज़ अ डिपार्टमेंट दैट आई सेट अप। इसका लिंक है विद द डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ थिएटर, फिल्म एंड टेलीविज़न, ग्लासगो यूनिवर्सिटी। नेशनल कॉलेज ऑफ आर्ट्स में सिनेमा स्कूल है, वहीं पर म्यूज़िकोलॉजी भी पढ़ाई जा रही है। तो ये कहना दुरुस्त नहीं है कि ऐसा काम हो नहीं रहा। मेरी अपनी थिएटर कंपनी है जो ग्लोब थिएटर में लेके गई थी ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ टेमिंग ऑफ द श्रू शेक्सपियर का, तो ये काम हो रहा है। लेकिन जैसे मैंने पहले अर्ज़ किया कि ये काम बहुत कम है, ये इसकी मिक़दार और इसका जो मैं समझती हूँ आउटरीच जो है वो और बहुत होना चाहिए, और इसमें स्टेट का बहुत हाथ है, क्योंकि आप अपने प्राइवेट रिसोर्सेज से इतना ही कर सकते हैं, और अभी भी इतना बोझ स्टेट का प्राइवेट सेक्टर ने उठा रखा है। सो स्टेट पॉलिसी रियली हैज़ टू कम इन वेरी साउंडली विद अ गुड, profound, far-reaching, forward-looking cultural policy.
And on that note, I'd just like to add that Navid Shahzad's company, Theatre Wale, it's the only theatre company which has ever put up a play, and for that matter, an adaptation of Shakespeare in Urdu at the Globe, which was last year or the year before that?
2012.
2012. At the Globe. Ji, please.
मेरा नाम आसिफ अंसारी है। मैंने पीटीवी में कोई तकरीबन 38 इयर्स की सर्विस की है, और लाहौर से 73 में शुरू किया था जब ये शायद
आपको मैंने पहचान लिया था।
हाँ, तो वो मेरे इंटरेक्शंस होते थे आपके, कभी कॉलेज में, यूनिवर्सिटी में, और वैसे तो मेरा मोस्ट मेमोरेबल पीरियड जो है वो लाहौर का है। हालांकि अवार्ड मैंने कराची में आके 5 लिए हैं।
अच्छा, माशाल्लाह।
लेकिन ये है कि वो वेरियस फील्ड में, लेकिन ग्रूमिंग के लिहाज से लाहौर मेरे लिए बहुत अच्छा था कि मेरी इतनी ओपनिंग थे, इतने लोग, पढ़े लिखे लोगों के साथ उठना बैठना, उनसे इंटरेक्शन। अच्छा, आपका मसला ये कि आपका मैं टीन एज के ज़माने से जो प्रोग्राम्स आपके आते रहे हैं टीवी पे, ताल मटोल और आपके सच गप और दूसरे, वो इतने ऐसे नक्श हैं कि वो उनके नकुश धुंधले नहीं होते। तो आप मुझे ये बताइए कि इरफान खुसट भी बैठे हुए हैं जो इस
सरमद
के आदमी हैं
जी,
तो अगर ये प्रोग्राम जो है अगर इसी तरह हो तो आप क्या समझती हैं कि आजकल के दौर में और उस दौर के हिसाब से वो ये जो गोल्डन पीरियड पीटीवी का था, अगर इसको रिवाइव करके इस तरह के प्रोग्राम अगर आजकल के दौर में हो तो क्या एक्सेप्टेबल होंगे इरफान खुसट भी और आप?
मैं समझती हूँ जी, मैं आपका बड़ा अच्छा सवाल है और बड़ा नेक ख्याल है कि ये रिवाइव होने चाहिए। मेरी सोच ज़रा इससे हट के है। देखिए, एज आई सेड व्हेन आई फर्स्ट स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग, आई एम अ चाइल्ड ऑफ द 60s। दीज यंग पीपल आर चिल्ड्रन ऑफ द 21st सेंचुरी, ठीक है ना। और पाकिस्तान में माशाअल्लाह वी आर अ वेरी यंग पॉपुलेशन रादर देन एन एजिंग पॉपुलेशन। तो आप और मैं इन अ सेंस काफ़ी हद तक इररेलेवेंट हो चुके हुए हैं। हमें ये समझ लेना चाहिए, बहुत अच्छा काम हुआ पास्ट में, लेकिन इनकी सोच, इनका काम बिल्कुल उससे मुस्तफ़ीद हो जो हम कर चुके हैं, उसको बिल्कुल डिस्कार्ड नहीं करना, लेकिन एक ट्रेडिशन है जो लेके चलनी है और उसमें नए ज़ाविये एक्सप्लोर करने हैं, नया काम होना चाहिए। हम क्यों सिर्फ पीछे देखते रहें, हम क्यों ना आगे देखें। एज अ नेशन वी शुड बी लुकिंग अहेड। आप देखिए व्हाट अ वंडरफुल स्पेट ऑफ फिल्म्स वी हैड लास्ट ईयर, 3 वंडरफुल फिल्म्स। कोई चीज़ उनमें आपस में मुशाबहत नहीं रखती, कोई चीज़ कॉमन नहीं है। एक रैम्पेंट कमर्शियल फिल्म है, एक ऑर्गेनिकली जेनेरिक फिल्म है सेट इन लाहौर, एक बिल्कुल एक और ही चीज़ को एक्सप्लोर करती है, द नेचर ऑफ लॉस। क्या कमाल है। आई एम नॉट सेइंग दे आर परफेक्ट फिल्म्स, but how wonderful to get this new cinematic imagination going. I mean, we're on the verge of a breakthrough, and this is wonderful. तो ठीक है, हमने बड़ा अच्छा काम किया, थैंक यू वेरी मच। आप लोग हमें अभी भी प्यार करते हैं और बड़ी इज्जत देते हैं, उसका बहुत शुक्रिया। लेकिन हर चीज़ का अपना एक दौर होता है, अपना एक वक्त होता है। तो अब ये जो यंग लोग हैं, इनको ज़रा अपनी पहचान जो है वो बनाने की इजाज़त देनी चाहिए।
Last question, Ji.
I am Liaz Siddiqui. Ma'am, I want to ask that you told that we are going towards information and that we have forgotten about the knowledge. So what steps that we should take to bring change in our attitude, in our motivation, to bring the tremendous changes and positive changes in our society to live a better and a creative life for other countries or for other regional countries?
All right.
Again, a very good question. I'll be very
Yes.
brief. I'll wind it up very quickly. I think parents should be taken to the cleaners. ये माँ बाप जो हैं, ये इतना प्रेशर अपने बच्चों पे डालते हैं A grades का, ये उन्होंने उनकी मत मार दी है. They've stolen their childhood from them. मैं देखती हूँ इतने इतने बच्चे स्कूल से घर आते हैं और वो सीधे ट्यूशन पे चले जाते हैं. ये माँ बाप ने दौड़ लगा रखी है. मेरा बेटा ब्रिलियंट हो, मेरी बेटी ब्रिलियंट हो. 9 A's, 11 A's, 12 A's, अनबिलीवेबल. ये हमने किया, ये आपका कसूर नहीं है, क्योंकि हम ही वो लोग हैं जिन्होंने सिर्फ सीखा सीखने के मारे. वो हमने भुला दिया. हमने सिर्फ ये दौड़ पकड़ ली कि जी किसके ग्रेड्स बेहतर हैं, क्या है क्या नहीं. तो वो यूनिवर्सिटीज़ और स्कूल्स वो सब उस दौड़ में शामिल हो गए. सो एक्चुअली द माइंडसेट ऑफ द पेरेंट्स हैव टू चेंज. हर चीज़ बिकाऊ नहीं होती, और ये जो चीज़ है ये तो बिल्कुल बिकाऊ नहीं है.
So, we need knowledge and probably lesser information. So, thank you so much for making us knowledgeable and educating us and entertaining us. And thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Thank you.